Silver powder whispered under Runo Ito's boots as he set out from the dome every dusk, mailbag bumping against his hip, helmet lamp off so nothing would outshine the stars. He was the last official courier of Selene Post, and probably the only postal worker in human history whose route crossed Maria, highlands, and rills instead of city blocks. The dome's airlock side closed behind him, sealing the small scientific settlement away. Out here, there was no wind, no sound, only that eternal hush that felt like someone holding their breath a millisecond too long. In that hush, Runo listened for the subtle chime that meant a letter was waking up inside his satchel. The people back on Earth never knew their letters traveled this far. They wrote messages or unsent wishes in notebooks, on napkins, and abandoned chat windows, then forgot them. The dream harbors those quantum receivers buried beneath major observatories plucked up a fraction of that flotsam and teleported it to Selene Post sorting hall. The scientists called it stochastic entanglement. Runo called it dreaming out loud. When he opened the lockbox each afternoon, papery envelopes shimmered and coalesced in 0G, each one stamped with an address that was not a place, but a feeling. Abe of the Atlantic at 3 a.m. He appeared between the hush and the hearth. It was Runo's task to deliver them to the sky. Tonight's route was long. He would cross the ridge at Heraclitus Crater, skirt the southern rim, and climb to the abandoned antenna mast at Point Tycho 6. There, on a scaffold older than many countries, the loom waited. Half stelloscope, half loom. Half impossible, it gathered letters, unraveled their ink into starlight threads, and wove them into constellations that Earth dwellers would notice only if they glanced up at the right moment and said, "That star wasn't there yesterday, was it?" Some of those glances would become stories, myths, or new letters. Cycle after cycle, Runo delivered, the loom stitched, and the sky kept changing by the quietest increments imaginable. His radio crackled. Runo, forecast shows micrometeor swarm brushing the highlands at 300. Keep your visor down. Thanks, Dina, he replied, voice bouncing off Earthside satellites before reaching the comms officer back in the dome. I'll be under the rim by then. Safe steps, Dina whispered, the traditional moonwalker farewell. He disabled the channel. Out here, loneliness was not an absence, but a presence, filling up the suit until the only heartbeat he could hear belonged to the moon itself. Yet in that loneliness, Runo felt purposeful. No traffic, no deadlines, no talk of stock indices, only letters wanting homes in the night. A chime twinkled within his satchel. Runo sat on a boulder to open it, gloves carefully easing back the flap. Moonlight sunlight glittered on the envelope's thin skins. He drew one at random. It was translucent, and within its folds he saw a miniature lake, green-blue as sea glass, reflecting autumn poplars that took their sweet time turning red. The address said, "For anyone who feels too far from water." Runo's breath caught. He had grown up in Osaka, where rivers and canals crisscrossed the city, where tide and current hummed like background music. On the moon, water existed only behind polymer walls. Every sip was rationed, measured, accounted for. He brushed his thumb over the envelope, feeling condensation that wasn't really there. Another letter chimed. This one flickered like an old film reel, kids kicking a worn football in dusty orange light. Address, to the one who speaks but isn't heard. A third, the smell of cardamom bread rising. Address, kitchen windows in winter, implying whoever opened it ought to see frost and safe hearth in one breath. Runo closed the satchel. The loom would handle the sorting. Its algorithms, though spell felt like a truer word, could parse sentiment, urgency, and resonance, then carve the night accordingly. He merely needed to carry the cargo. He checked his tether and started across the plain. The lunar surface was deceptively soft. Boots sank a few centimeters, leaving impressions that might last a million years. Runo always stepped precisely, arranging his footprints like punctuation marks so some future archaeologist could read them as a poem. I was here to gift your skies. Tonight he added another clause. Just before the ridge, the land turned jagged. Basalt shards protruded like broken pottery. He bounded over them, exhaling to adjust suit pressure. At the rim he paused to survey Heraclitus. The crater's interior plunged shadow deep, sun glazing its far wall. Runo lifted his visor's glare filter and stared into that sea of darkness, a reminder the moon had swallowed innumerable impacts, yet kept on circling Earth like a patient parent orbiting a restless child. Inside the dark, a soft glow pulsed faint, pale lavender. Runo's pulse skipped. Not lunar luminescence, such a thing didn't exist, but a letter, fallen, Sometimes, in transit from sort hall to satchel, a dream slipped away, drawn towards some magnetic cousin emotion hidden in the regolith. Earl said, all letters must be retrieved. Dreams left unsent could sour, mutate, become nightmares that haunted telescopes and insomnia alike. He clipped his line to a piton, descended the slope, each hop careful. The glow writhed in dust, trying to burrow. Runo knelt and scooped it up. The envelope felt heavier than the others, as if it contained stone. He turned it. Address, delivered to the carrier who lost someone. Ink shimmered between ultraviolet and sorrow. Runo studied his breathing. Another instruction. Couriers must not open letters unless address explicitly names them. This one did, yet he hesitated. 8 years earlier, before the post, before the moon, he and Aya had planned to sail the inland sea, mapping bioluminescent plankton for a startup that never secured funding. They had written each other letters sealed with silly sea monster doodles, promising a trip postponed 1 month, 3 months, indefinitely. Then Aya's cancer bloomed like a nebula in her lungs. When Runo stood beside her bed, she wheezed, "Find a sky big enough to hold what we wanted." Days later, he applied to Celine Post. He opened Aya's letter, no ink. Instead, a faint Tide smell seeped into his helmet, impossible yet piercing. Text formed, silvery motes spelling, "Runo, I dreamed. You stitched all our postponed journeys into one horizon. I woke before I could thank you." Silence swallowed him. He closed the flap, tucked the letter into his breast pocket instead of the satchel. It would still reach the loom, just via a nearer path. Runo climbed back, resumed trekking. Earthrise on the horizon. That blue-white marble turning slowly like an unread globe. When Earth's edge blushed with sunrise, humans down there would wake to notice, perhaps, a new scattering of stars. At 200, he reached Point Tycho 6, an old radio tower repurposed as a cosmic loom. Spindly legs drilled into bedrock, and cables hissed static as solar arrays flexed. The loom's core looked almost domestic. A circular platform with a rocking chair-shaped cradle for letters and a hoop above, like a giant embroidery ring. But once activated, it transcended explanation. Microlasers and gravitational lensing twisted raw letter dreams into photonic filaments, which shot upward, caught by the hoop, and slingshotted into selenocentric orbit. From there, Earth's magnetosphere refracted them into constellations temporary but bright. A star might glitter 3 nights, or 3 years, depending on how fiercely the dream burned. Runo keyed his code. The loom hummed awake, lighting his suit with dappled prism glow. He unshouldered the satchel and poured the envelopes into the cradle. Gentle snow of wishes, regrets, silent songs. They arranged themselves, rotating like a galaxy in miniature. Sensors scanned, sorting, lanes flickered open, and letters zipped along translucent tracks toward spool chambers. He removed Aya's letter from his pocket, hesitant to relinquish it. Protocol, all letters belong to the sky. Yet maybe, he thought, some dreams preferred to stay personal. The loom's optical sensors turned, focusing on him like curious eyes. He swallowed. He placed the letter against the cradle rim, but kept a finger on it. "Override," he whispered. "Partial weave, keep physical copy." The loom blinked. Hall Central had authorized partial weaves before when colonists wanted to retain souvenirs for funeral rites or art collages. The machine accepted, creating a digital twin while the envelope remained intact. It floated back into Runo's palm, weightless now because the dream inside had been copied out. He slid it cautiously into an inner suit pocket close to his heart. The weave began. Silver threads spiraled upward through the hoop, leaping like fountains of moonlight. Runo stepped back to watch the forming pattern. Tonight, the tapestry arranged itself into a heron mid-flight. Wings spread across Mare Austral. Another cluster formed, a teacup, spilling steam near Sagittarius. And there, a shimmering coastline, wave crest spicules bright as magnesium Aya's dream, set just above the Pacific Ocean where she had grown up. Runo stayed until the last thread snapped free. The loom settled into standby. He checked telemetry. All letters accounted for, no contamination, luminous magnitude within safe parameters. Good. He powered down. Earthlight bathed the tower. In his helmet display, a private ping popped. Dina again. Meteor swarm tracking shows early arrival. ETA 2 minutes on your coordinates. Runo looked up. The sky glittered with new constellations and faint flickers not of his making, pricks of fiery dust. Copy, he said, voice calm, although adrenaline surged. The antenna mass had shielding, but limited. He clipped to the emergency rail, ducking under the platform's plating. Micrometeors arrived like a hail of sparks, silent but deadly. Sensors registered dozens of pings. One pebble struck the tower leg with a metallic thunk that buzzed in his bones. Runo crouched, breath fogging visor interior. He held Aya's envelope against his chest. Stay, he murmured. Impact storm lasted 17 seconds. Then emptiness reclaimed the realm. Runo crawled out. The tower stood unscathed, except a charred nick where paint had vaporized decades earlier. He exhaled. My route's clear, he told Dina. Copy. Constellations uploading. Good show, carrier. Beyond Antoninin Ridge, the lunar horizon shimmered with dust unsettled by the swarm. Within that haze, Runo glimpsed something new, faint threads still weaving themselves as though the loom's last impulse escaped, and now space itself was finishing the dream. Or maybe meteoroid impacts themselves bore dreams, messages from rogue comets offering contributions to the tapestry. Runo began the long walk home. Stillness rewrapped him, except now he felt accompanied. He kept fingering Aya's empty letter, thinking how a dream could be both private and shared, both letter and star. Above the suit's shoulder camera, Earth loomed higher, eastward tilt revealing Japan's archipelago along the terminator between night and dawn. In a few hours, fishermen would set out, their decks rattling with nets. Commuters would file into subways. Children would point at unusual bright specks near the horizon and ask parents if they were planets. He imagined a boy standing on a balcony in Osaka, looking skyward, noticing the coastline constellation shining like a stitched salt line high above the Pacific. The boy might ask, what's that one called? Maybe his grandmother would answer, the Longshore, inventing a myth on the spot about a traveler who walked so far around the world that his footprints became stars. Their story would become a new dream, scribbled in a notebook, launched eventually to the moon. Bruno smiled. Postal ecosystems relied on feedback loops. Dreams, constellations, stories, new dreams. Halfway back, fatigue gnawed. Lunar gravity eased weight, but not effort. He sat on an outcrop to sip recycled water, his visor filled with faint reflection. His face, older than he admitted, eyes bloodshot, cheeks sagging under low G redesign. Yet, amidst lines and stubble, he saw a quiet contentment. Aya would laugh at the ridiculousness. My sailors carry sails, you carry galaxies. Runo toggled suit speakers to capture ambient silence, his favorite oxymoron. He pressed a finger to the envelope inside his pocket. Thank you, he whispered to Aya. Unsure which part of Cosmos might relay the message, but trusting the postal network extended beyond physics. When he resumed walking, he realized he had no memory of childhood constellations, the ones taught in planetariums. Orion, Cassiopeia, Ursa Minor. The sky above Earth had changed so often under the loom's quiet needles that the old shapes were mostly swallowed, rearranged, dissolved. Some criticized this, petitioning UNESCO for stellar heritage protection zones. But Runo believed the sky should reflect living hearts, not historical freeze frame. Even if one day nobody remembered Orion's belt, they would remember the heron, the spilled teacup, the longshore, each a timestamp of human hopes. Back at the dome, he cycled through the lock, feet clanking on metal grid. Dina met him with a tablet of telemetry. Her ebony hair floated in artific gravity gradient as she grinned. Delivery complete with 99.98% coherency. You continue breaking your own record. Traffic was light, he said modestly, shrugging off the satchel. Dina's eyes narrowed at the envelope he drew from the suit. A souvenir? Authorized partial weave, he explained, handing over a scan code. Personal archive. She nodded, uncurious. Celine Post employees saw stranger keepsakes. Melted meteorite teeth, whistle pitches of cosmic rays encoded into vinyl, invisible perfumes. We'll log it. Runo changed in the locker room. Weight returned to normal as mag boots clicked off. Steam from the communal baths drifted sweet-cedar. He submerged, eyelids fluttering. Water enveloped him like a lake from the letter earlier. He almost tasted sea glass. Afterward, wrapped in towel, he sat at the habitation bay's viewport. Night still gripped the lunar plains, but Earth now had dawn stripes. Tiny pinpricks glowed, the constellations he had birthed an hour ago. With naked eye, he picked out the heron, wings arching elegantly. The teacup poured over Brazil with faint fizzle, and there, just above the gleam of sun-risen Pacific, the shoreline glinted. Aya's dream, shared, yet still hers. He unfurled the physical envelope on his lap. Inside lay blank paper, the tide smell gone. He pulled a pen archaic on the moon where most wrote by stylists and began a reply. Here, tonight your horizon rose. I watched it catch the light like sea foam around a black pearl island. People will give it names, we have no control over that, but I will always call it Aya's Cove. I hope wherever you drift it reflects back, bright enough to read by. He signed, folded, and sealed with a strip of adhesive. Instead of placing the letter into the outgoing bin, he slipped it into a small tin box labeled Carrier Dead Letter. Celine Post maintained this box for notes that couriers wrote but never transmitted, private cargo. Regulation or not, the box somehow always ended up in the loom's hopper during maintenance cycles. Runo suspected Dina of clandestine mischief. Fine, let the machine decide. 2 sols later, the moon's slow rotation would carry Point Taito 6 beneath Aya's Cove again. Maybe the loon, recognizing the resonance, would spin Runo's reply into a star beside hers, a twin glimmer. Maybe not. The uncertainty felt like breathing, unpredictable yet essential. He turned off the viewport lights so only the stars remained. The sky pulsed with dreams, each point of light a postmark, proving someone had dared to imagine otherwise. Runo, mail carrier on the moon, allowed his eyes to blur until the tapestry merged into one luminous surf. He let that surf wash over fatigue, longing, and the bittersweet ache of remembrance until even loneliness felt like part of the route. A necessary distance between the sender and receiver, a vacuum across which starlight letters could fly. Tomorrow, another bag, another hush. He would step out again, boots scripping poems into dust, while above the constellations drifted and recombined, ever-changing, like human hearts learning to spell themselves across the dark.